So welcome. This is where the shoe meets the dust. This is where we operate on the ground. So all of those who have real questions, please hold on for the next 30, 40 minutes. The way we structured this, we were talking earlier, is each of us will get an opportunity to talk about things that we believe in, and then do some leading general discussion before we throw it open to the floor. Let me start out by saying I've been in the field of education for over 2 decades now. And as entrepreneurs, we're all entrepreneurs, or at least leading decision makers, entrepreneurs have this very special place in society, very exciting. Entrepreneurs are people who engage cutting-edge technology to transform the planet. By that very definition, we edupreneurs in the field of education are bestowed with the same special excitement. And I'm only saying it tongue-in-cheek because it has never been more challenging as an entrepreneur. It has never been most challenging in education. And give me 2-3 minutes to build that up. We are at a space where the industry is talking about the industrial age 4.0, fourth edition. And what that means is that life has transformed. We as education people who are representing education have often been brandished that education has not met the industry needs. Let's look at Industrial 4.0. Take some examples, okay? Let me run you through. How many of you even remember the Kodak cameras? In 1998, this company engaged 170,000 employees and sold over 70% of film paper. It's nowhere on the face of the earth today. Simply because technology reinvented the art of photography through smartphones. Take Uber. Uberization is a huge impact. Today, Uber, that doesn't own one taxi, is the largest taxi service in the world. All it is a software. Take Airbnb. No assets. All the funding agencies that sit here and talk about asset light, my God, these two companies have reinvented the word asset light. Airbnb doesn't hold anything. And I'm going to link it up how it's going to challenge education. Take artificial intelligence. We've all been talking about robotization and how human jobs are going to be cut further. Take artificial intelligence. There's this software called IBM Watson that does 90% accuracy on cancer diagnosis than human intervention. The legal fraternity is worried because it's about computer iteration. So it throws up legal advice far more accurately than new people joining the legal space. So there's only space in legal for specialized people. In the face of that, are we really preparing students? All of us who are operators in K-12 and higher ed space, are we really preparing students to meet these challenges of Industrial 4.0? Let me bring in Gopal. Let's look at how we as an industry are struggling to meet the needs. And no matter how much we do, we'll still be short of. So Gopal is going to talk about how they have, he's the VP, at Manipal Global, and everybody knows Manipal is a very reputed organization, have been in the field for several years. He's going to bring in his experience to tell us how they are gearing up for the future-ready workforce. Gopal.
Yeah, thanks, Manjula. So whatever we spoke from the morning about scale, about blended learning, about trying to bring in connected learning, bringing in placements and learning. So all these things we've been kind of experimenting with at Manipal Global. We are primarily in the higher education space. We have a bunch of universities, we have enterprise training, and we also directly train consumers through online. And we also have an assessment company. So we're just talking about scale. Every year, around 250,000 learners is what we cater to. So it is at scale. And what Manjula referred to is something that we're seeing today. I'll just take the example of the IT industry. IT industry, we all knew for quite some time that the engineers who were coming out were not ready for deployment. So every IT company had to build its own, IT training boot camp for 3 months or so, and that's how the industry was functioning. But today there's a bigger challenge because of all the technologies that are changing. So what's happening is that what we believe is that by 2025, 50% of the current IT people in the IT industry need to get reskilled. 50% of the managers need to undergo a huge amount of reskilling. And there's lots of new technologies which are coming in continuously. So this is a massive, massive change that is happening. And at the same time, the IT industries are getting affected through automation. So there's a shortage of newer employees that they might require. So there's a massive disruption that's likely to happen in the next several years. So we are doing several things in that regard. We have a Manipal Academy of IT just to cater to this. We have recently launched a data sciences academy because there's a shortage of around 200,000 data scientists that are required. And we also have a lot of online courses that we do where learners can directly come and do these courses. Now, the challenges are there because when this reskilling is happening, these are all working professionals. How do they learn while they continue to work? How do they learn? Today, somebody in the morning, I think it was the OMDR CEO was talking about the fact that credentialing needs to change. Many companies today still want people with degrees, but we're seeing that all these things that we need to provide need not have a degree attached to it. It can just be a certification. But because of the market requirement for our Manipal Academy of Data Sciences, for example, we tied up with one of our university partners to offer a PG diploma in data sciences. So there's a lot of things that need to change to make this happen, but there's a huge scale that is there. We work with startups all the time. We've invested in startups directly. For example, we've invested in a data sciences startup. So we invest in startups. We have our own content. We deliver this content. So we're working constantly. For example, just one quick point on online. While everybody's talking that online is the way to go, completion rates are a challenge. We all know that. People don't complete the course. They lose interest. Self-learning is hard. So what do you need to do to make self-learning, or the completion rates go up to 90% is a big challenge that we continuously work on. We had to relaunch our mobile app to make it mobile-first learning system and bring in short bites kind of learning mechanisms into it. We had to bring in a lot of learning analytics into it to kind of understand what the student is potentially going to be needing in terms of course curriculum, what was earlier referred to as kind of personalized learning. So a lot of these things are, I would say, early stages. We're doing a lot of experiments. We're working with startups, but there's a huge opportunity. So anyone who is interested, who's got something interesting and would like to talk about it after the session, I would be more than happy to listen to that. Thank you.
So one of the things that the topic wanted us to deal with is the huge disparity or diversity that the education system has. So on the one hand, we have affordable schooling, elitist, international schooling. On the other hand, we have children with absolutely no access. So a lot of the focus of the last, if I may, edition of education was on access and equity. And if that kind of led to, let me try and build a little background here. And I'm going to borrow from Mr. Mohandas Pai. He wrote a paper on these different editions of education for FICCI. So if we were to look at the history of education, and if we were to say that education, the first edition or 1.0 of education belongs to the Gurukuls of India. And by the same parallel, it would go to the academicias of Greece. If you were to look at that scenario, it was very individualized. It was teacher-led. It ranged from every subject, from astronomy to agriculture to name it, medicine. It was also very privileged. So it was for the, people who had access to the tutor, not eclavia. It was not accessed by eclavia. The other thing that it was also, so if that was an education scenario, the industrial or the economic scenario at that time was labor force. People who worked in the fields, people who drew carts, that was the economic scenario. So that if we call 1.0, it gave into 2.0 in education, which is essentially the industrial age, which is in machines. So right from the steam engine, you saw all the way to bullet trains. At that time, education became broad-based. So there was mass enrollments. And even now, the planning commissions are still talking about equity and access. And when we do that, when we talk about equity and access, somehow down the line, we lost on quality. We have two very interesting people here who deal with this entire diversity. Prachi here is part of the Dell Foundation that has been working for 15 odd years in improving the lives and the needs of the urban poor. And one of the very nice motto they have is every child at a time. And Srini here represents career launchers who work across the spectra of education and deal with almost every topic, K-12, skilling, higher ed, and they deal in the affordable segment. So it will be very interesting to hear from both of them the diverse needs of a non-affording and affording segment. Let me first bring in Prachi, not only because I'm gender biased, but also because it's in the order.
All right. Thanks, Manjula, for that introduction. And thanks again, all of you here for being in the audience and participating in this discussion. Just giving a very brief introduction to what Manjula already spoke about. The foundation works for improving the lives of children living in urban poverty. And we do that, we take that word transformation very seriously. So every single thing that we do has to improve outcomes in a very measurable and in a very, very dramatic fashion. We invest in the areas of education, skilling, and financial inclusion. And we are a venture philanthropist organization, so we do both equity investments as well as grants to not-for-profits. In education and skilling, we've made close to 10 investments now, and an equal number of investments that we've made through our funds, Unitas, Will Grow, and IEIF. So close to 22 investments overall in the area of education and skilling alone. And what are all these companies, all these social enterprises, what are all of them focusing on? All of them are focusing on grappling with the same issue, the issue of quality. When it comes to quality in our schools, it's extremely poor. When it comes to the issue of quality available for students wanting to move to higher education, which is largely called the test prep market in India. Again, the issue of same poor quality. And once you've gotten to a college, you again grapple with the same issue of quality. So the biggest issue that exists in the education system today is of quality and poor quality across the board. And what worsens and exacerbates that issue is that quality is actually not measurable. So, we all understand that the quality is poor, but are we really being able to measure it in a way to say, yes, the quality is poor, and therefore trying to improve it from there? No, none of that is possible in India. So the effort that we've made through the investments that we have done is to invest in companies and social enterprises which are using innovative models to be able to improve the level of education which is available in whichever format they're applying. So like I said, we invest in both skilling as well as K-12 education companies, improving career readiness of students in colleges, college entrance. And the effort there is that can you improve the quality for them at the price points which they can afford in a measurable way to change the outcomes. And within that, I think, Manjula was talking about, what is the dichotomy, and I would love to hear Srini's views on that. But, specifically to answer that question, what is the dichotomy? I don't think there is, a poor child living in an urban slum is aspiring for anything, much lower than what, our children or children studying in elite private schools do. The aspiration is very much there. Are the means available or not is the question. In fact, many companies, which social enterprises especially, which start, their businesses, actually get misled by an assumption of a lack of aspiration in the poor of the country. It is actually not there at all. If you offer a product which is customized for the poor, saying, because you're poor, therefore, for you just to pass an exam when you're studying in school is enough. It's actually a fundamentally wrong understanding of the market. And actually, if I extend that argument to what is happening in the skilling industry today, and we've worked and invested in that industry closing, it's again a big mismatch with the aspiration of the youth which are over there. So I would wait to hear from Srini on, what he thinks the dichotomy in that market is. But I don't think there is any difference in aspiration. There is any difference in the level of quality which the children coming from lower middle class or lower income families is. The aspiration is similar. We all want to march ahead, transform the life outcomes wherever we are sitting and participate in the knowledge economy of India. Whether or not it can be provided in an affordable way is really the question today.
Thank you, Prachi. To take it from Prachi, we are present across segments, though a lot of I met quite a few already who told me that there were students in my class in 1998, 99, and they went on to their entrepreneurs now. So we started from test prep basically because we didn't have any investors at that point of time to bootstrap. That's why we went to test prep. And literally we started beneath a tree in Atul Grove Road. People said, you are from IIMs, we are ready to come and sit in your class. And we had benches, nothing else, only under the tree. That's how we started. Today we are spread across. In the last 7-8 years, the test prep share in our revenues has come down to less than 50% and so much more. So we are into K-12. We are into skills. We work across 9 states in the country. And we are like CL inside almost 160 universities in this country. So empowering universities to be market ready. That's what we do. That goes to the extent of giving digital presence to universities. And also there are few of the largest universities in this country which provide distance education. They run on our platform. Globally, Indian universities are way below ranking simply because innovation research doesn't happen. So we have kickstarted about 6-7 years ago, and I'm very proudly, I would like to say that institutions like IITs seek our help to facilitate their students to work on research and innovation. Yeah. So this is broad spectrum. And Prachi shared very interesting thing, that is unorganized and organized, metros and hinterland. We have schools, and we have schools, for example, in Hyderabad, we set up rural schools too, in Khammam, Warangal, and so on and so forth. So these are schools of 185 rupees, 200 rupees per month, kind of. And we are at cutting edge of technology from the very beginning. So we have had training to teachers, classes through Skype, a lot of stuff happening to those teachers. And we pick up teachers from locality, train them to impart really good education that students in our larger schools get. So one of the schools, we said it's a rural school, so we'll have uniform kurta pajama. And there was a whole protest in the village saying that no, we expect dresses. They dress in tie, and they will wear shoes, and so on and so forth. So the aspirations are too high. In fact, our classrooms, we have what is called night classes. So a lot of classes happen at night from 9:30 to 11:30 across the weekdays. And there are classes where 3,000 odd students from Dimapur and the remotest parts of the country come and attend the classes. And they are delighted. So the aspirations are one and the same. Technology is facilitating. But there is so much more in terms of quality that we spoke about needs to be done. So that's where I stop now.
So when we talked about quality, it's a general perception that quality has to come for a price. So while equity and access is all right, quality has to come for a price. And which is where private players get a lot of beating in society, because education is supposedly a responsibility that one owes to the society. And so when, private players charge or mark up the fees, you know that everybody comes down heavily on them. Does quality really come with a price? I mean, I'm not going to answer that, but definitely we've seen this. There's also an assumption that private players offer more quality in the market than, say, government. Of course, there's a huge scale of quality, and one can always debate whether A quality is better than B quality. But even if you say, as an overarching statement, that private players provide better quality than any other player, today we are talking about 30% of society comes to private schools. About 5 years ago, it was far less. It was a single digit. So 60-70% of Indian kids are really in rural places, in hill regions, in what we call the semi-rural, in the semi-urban, urban poor. And then there's an urban affordable, urban rich, which is probably where the private players are targeting. There's layers and layers beneath, which we are not accessing. I'm going to bring Bindu in here, who is part of the CEO of the Millennial Schools. She runs several preschools, K-12, and I want to bring in her experience with rural schooling, and then please talk about everything else that's valuable to you. But please start with the rural schooling, because she's going to explain how difficult it is for any private player to go in there and make a change, and what kind of challenges one goes through when they do that. Bindu.
It's Manjula. It amazes me when we talk of edupreneurs, because the two are absolutely a dichotomy here. While we look at education, we always view it as a social perspective. It's a social work. And then, entrepreneur would always look at it from a profit perspective. So when we match the two together, it creates a lot of eyebrows that raise up, and especially in the government sector. So if you ever go back to them and you say, I'm setting up X number of schools in the rural segment, the bureaucrat will stand up and he will look at you very suspiciously and say, you're going to make money out of this. I'm going to make money out of it because I'm an edupreneur. Social work is the government's work. But I'm bringing in social work and trying to make money out of it. I think I'm doing a good job. I need to sustain schools. At the end of it, schools need to be sustainable. We've always had, and history has always proved, that schools have collapsed when they are dependent on anyone. Whether history has said that to us again and again, and we never learn from our history. Therefore, there was a time when we also had this social zeal and this, CSR zeal, that we would open up schools. And just like Srinivasan said, we said the aspirations are very high in these rural areas. And therefore, let's go there and open schools. So we said, what is the price point at which we will get the audience? Will we get them at an X amount, or should we look at it from a profitable perspective? And after a lot of debate, we realized that yes, we needed an X point to bring in quality. Because at the end of the day, if we were just opening up a rural school, we would not have been different from the small rural schools that already exist. But to bring in that qualitative rural school requires funds, requires money. Now, if I stand here and ask anybody here in terms of how many of you would give me equity to begin a rural school, I'm sure you're not going to look at me at the eye. Or if I look at people here who are doing impact funding, what would they fund me on? They would fund me on, and there is no apology to Dell Foundation because I know they're doing a fabulous job and full credit to them for the work they do. But it's not them that I'm referring to. I'm referring to a lot of people that I have spoken to, and they will tell you, we will fund you on learning outcomes. Fine. I can give you learning outcomes. Learning outcomes will take 5 years to give you learning outcomes in a child. Will you wait for me till 5 years? And invariably, you will see after 2 or 3 years, funds are withdrawn. And when they are being withdrawn, I'm struggling there to maintain quality in these so-called schools. So we're living in a very dichotomical world. While on our vision, we have this so-called vision, every child access to education. Government, well, less said about the government, but if a private player needs to bring in access, it can bring in through technology. It has a lot of ways, and we are innovative in bringing that into different areas of this country. We can bring in access, equity, everything. But where's the funds for it? Because I can open up 1 school, 2 schools, 3 schools on my CSR fund. But can I reach out to every corner? So our experience has been that while we went into these rural schools, and I don't know what Srinivasan did, I opened up personally 13 rural schools in one of the backward areas in India. And unfortunately, we were not able to sustain any of them. Why? Because even the price point with which we opened these schools was the lowest price point that we could think of. Parents could not even afford that. And we were dependent on, agriculture, which would sort of reap and harvest for fees to come in 6 months, 8 months later. So there was no way that we could bring in quality into these schools unless we upped the price point. The minute we upped the price point, children left the school. So we're struggling. We're looking for a model right now in India which can actually be the right price point, and the right price point can actually be done through a PPP model. And I think that's the point which the government needs to come in, and the private player needs to sort of put in its prospect and say, public-private partnership is what is going to help rural schools set up in this country.
Thank you so much, Bindu. So, since everybody in this panel are practitioners, I thought I'll just have one general question. What are your burning challenges? I mean, are they operational issues? Are they funding issues? Are they regulatory issues? If you could just kind of throw light, because it's a very mixed audience. There are, of course, there are people who are funding. There are also people who are startups. So it would be very useful to know what kind of challenges this panel faces.
Yeah, I think there are 2-3 challenges that we constantly battle with. One is in terms of we need to be on the we have to be ahead of the curve in terms of what's happening. For example, our banking academy, we're one of the most of the banks get their employees trained through our banking academy. But then in the last couple of years, we had to bring in blended learning in a big way. We had to digitize a lot of content and make it into a flipped classroom, and thereby also reducing the time people would take in a residential academy. So we did that because that's what the industry demanded. So we have to continuously innovate in what the industry is looking at, whether it's banking, whether it's IT, or whether it's the other industries. So that's one thing that we have to constantly look at. The second challenge that we are facing with is that the learning which has to happen online for our online programs, we have to make it as easy as a physical thing. So we're looking at concepts like, a programming environment where people can learn programming, they can actually do the coding. So we built that into our platform. We had to bring in simulators for various of our courses. For example, for digital marketing, which is a very successful course that we offer, we had to bring in a simulator where people could buy AdWords, Google AdWords, and spend on that without actually spending the money. So a lot of these simulators had to come in. So these are some of the things that we are constantly looking at. How do we make online learning more effective, ensure that people are learning? So that's the second thing that I would talk about. The third thing, of course, is regulatory, especially where it is related to our, regulated business, which is all about degrees. So there, I think there's a lot of policy. For example, the policies are undergoing, continuously changing. For example, in distance education, which was again referred to today by Neeta in the morning. It's a great thing that we have, which is distance education. It's a great opportunity to kind of leapfrog, give access to so many students. We have a very successful distance education program, but the rules keep changing every year, and they're not very clear about what they want to do. For example, online education is not yet, there's no policy on that actually. So today you cannot really award an online degree in India. They keep talking about coming up with a policy, but they've not yet done that. In distance education, if you have one of the latest rules that they came up with is that you can't have examinations conducted in other parts of the country. Then how can it be distance education if you can't actually conduct exams wherever you want to? So these are the kind of uncertainties that we are challenged with. And but it's an interesting, higher education is an interesting space.
Okay, so I'll just make a quick comment on the cost for quality that Bindu was talking about, and then move on to the challenges that we are talking about. I mean, and I think that is one of the big challenges. We don't have any investments in brick and mortar school chains, or so where it's the biggest challenge. But in general, the challenge when you're working in the affordable sector is that what is the cost at which you are providing the quality, and that varies across the spectrum. But then but where is the innovation in reducing that cost? And is it really impossible to be able to provide the kind of quality which, elite private schools are providing, or, the test prep centers are providing at a much lower cost? And that's what we are out there to disprove. And, there are examples of companies which are trying to do that. We have an investment in a test prep company which provides JEE test prep at 1/3 the cost of the market, and has a pretty similar selection rate of 30-35% qualifying for the JEE exam. So is it possible? Yes, it is possible. But, is there enough innovation being done in that? I think very little. We are just taking some of these cost parameters as a given and not innovating enough around it. Another example that I have from a not-for-profit that we've funded for several years through grants is working literally at 1/3 the price of any government school, also 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per child, and achieves the same kind of quality outcomes that children in elite private schools achieve. So I think that's where the innovation is needed. Can you leverage technology to actually reduce that cost in order to be able to do that? Where do we see a lot of challenges in our companies where we've invested and not invested also? One big challenge I find in education in general is a constant reinventing of the wheel. Every entrepreneur who comes to you with a business plan has found a new way of understanding how brain is wired, how children learn, and is going to take the next few years just trying to put that into action such that, after 6 or 7 years, you're ready to launch this in the market. Is it really needed is the question that we need. At least we as investors have moved away significantly from creation of content again, rethinking on many of these fronts, because we think the problem that we are solving is much more urgent and we need solutions yesterday. We needed them yesterday. So can we actually leverage what is available in the market in terms of available content, in terms of available understanding, in terms of, what others have learned? Big challenge, I think, in the education investment industry. Very low use of data and analytics. I mean, Akamai was standing here and giving us a lot of information on how users are behaving behaving, what are the trends, etc., etc. Very few education companies will be able to tell you what their results are, why they've achieved those results, why they have not achieved those results, what is the 80% in how they're achieving those results, how can they go up, what is the process adherence in the classrooms, which teachers are performing. I mean, all kinds of data which can today dramatically change the outcomes is sitting there, is in the hands of people, but is not getting utilized. And that's where even the technology interventions are not going. A lot of technology intervention going towards, replacing teachers, which is never going to happen. It's about, self-learning where, the completion rates are very low. A lot of innovation happening there, but innovation happening in using data analytics in classrooms and the use of data in the classroom, again, a big challenge, which is a big challenge to scale, because till we processize many of those things, we understand the science behind them, impossible to scale programs. Finally, I think a bigger challenge in schools, and we work in a lot of government schools as well, but a bigger challenge in all center-based businesses, process adherence in general is very low. So, you've created a certain system of delivery, but, will your teachers, will your trainers, will your facilitators, as you're scaling, follow those processes? As the companies are scaling, we're finding that particular element as a big piece which we've not been able to sort so far.
I see one of the challenges is the millennials have embraced technology, and as a company, you've got to be abreast and deliver. While there is one part of India where you need to deliver on the ground. The blended, even for millennials, blended is what we need to look at. Second, to deliver quality. For people who deliver quality, you need quality people. So that's where the second challenge I see. And obviously, the universities realize, as somebody shared, the curriculum is in the 18th century and we are getting in the 21st century. The processes, pedagogy, all have to be taken care of. But regulatory things come in between. Universities embracing these things through private partnerships. So I see these are the three. Of course, if you've got to be inventing all the time, there's always pressure on finances. Thank you.
I think I have a very simple challenge, that is de-educationization. With demonetization going on, I think we need a complete overhaul in our education. Yes, completely. And that will only come about if we have this deregulation. I mean, this legislation has to be passed on this, and the government has to get out of this very so-called norm of doing social work and stop being hypocritical and sort of create it into an industry which is robust, which is open, which is giving way for talent, which is giving way for innovation, and creating quality and making this into a fantastic human industry which we will all cherish.
I guess in one line, if I were to conclude this, while we are excited about the future, we know that to match the industrial needs of 4.0, education has to rise to the challenge of at least coming to 3, if not 4. And technology is going to be a huge lever. Technology is going to be a huge driver in order to achieve some level of quality. So if we use quality as a scale and technology as the lever, we'll get someplace. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time.